Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Kristen Hoskins. I'm the Director of Public Programs here at the MFA. I'm delighted to welcome you to the Esther Steinberg Memorial Lecture. We are thrilled to be able to welcome Tatiana Bilbao to present Living, a House, a Garden, an Aquarium, and more. Founded in 1870, the MFA stands on the historic homelands of the Massachusetts people, a site which has long served as a place of meeting and exchange among different nations. As a museum, we acknowledge the long history of the land we occupy today and seek ways to make Indigenous narratives more prominent in our galleries and our programming. We can all learn more about the Massachusetts people who continue to be the stewards of the land by visiting massachusettstribe.org. And now, it is my pleasure to turn it over to our great partner in this talk, Karen Nelson, Dean and Faculty at the Boston Architectural College.
Thank you, Kristen. I really appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. I'm Karen Nelson from the Boston Architectural College, an independent college of spatial design in Boston's Back Bay, dedicated to access, inclusion, and global connections. It's a privilege to introduce Tatiana Bilbao to you this evening. I first met her last May when she received an honorary doctorate from the BAC. Tonight, we have an opportunity to hear from her directly about her profound ideas and how they shape architecture. Tatiana Bilbao is not only an architect, she is a conductor of conversations, a correspondent with places and people, a narrator, and a maker. Her work asks fundamental questions. How should we live? What time scale should we consider? How do culture and family shape space? Her architecture elevates daily life, creating spaces that both inspire and provide care. Her firm's work is deeply engaged with essential human needs. Through slow drawings, handcrafted models, and collages that serve as visual narratives, she creates dreamscapes that bridge memory and imagination, spaces that come to life through perseverance and purpose. Tatiana founded her eponymous firm in 2004 in Mexico City to integrate research, design, community-driven strategies, and responsible construction. Before establishing her practice, she served as an advisor to the Secretary of Development and Housing for the government in Mexico City. She holds a professorship at the Yale School of Architecture and has taught at Columbia, Harvard, Rice, Bello University in Chile, the Peter Behrens School in Dusseldorf, and her work has been widely published, including the New York Times, Domus, Arquitectura Viva, A+U, and El País, among others. She has many accolades. I will just name a few. She was named an Emerging Voice by the Architectural League of New York in 2010. She was the recipient of the Kunstpreis in Berlin in 2012, and in 2014, the Locust Foundation Global Award for Sustainable Architecture. In 2021, she was named an Honorary Fellow of the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada. And in 2022, she was awarded the Richard Neutra Award and the A.W. Architect Award. Her work has been exhibited worldwide, including at the Louisiana Museum in Copenhagen, the Centre Pompidou in Paris, and the Carnegie Museum of Art. If you haven't yet, I encourage you to visit the BAC's current exhibit of her Sea of Cortez Research Center on display through early May. Tatiana Bilbao's practice is a testament to the idea that architecture is not just about buildings, it's about creating platforms for life, spaces that empower, adapt, and endure. Please join me in welcoming Tatiana Bilbao.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Karen. It's for me an honor to be here with you tonight. Thank you for coming to share a little bit of my work. I thought I put it together a lecture where through 3 or more projects, I will kind of go and draw through the ethos that drives behind our work. I really kind of think that architecture provides a primary form of care. This is the way I operate and the way I kind of holds all my work together. Without architecture that serves a mediating agency between ourselves and the environment, we cannot exist on it. So for me, architecture not only is this protective shelf, it provides a primary form of care, and for me, then it's a fundamental and hyper-responsible act. Eight years ago, I was approached by Pater Culiacan, a Cistercian monk from the Austrian Abbey of Heiligenkreuz in Austria. He approached me with the idea of me helping them to build a new monastery in the very east part of Germany, in Neuzelle. And I was very excited to understand that the monastery is the ultimate domestic space. It didn't took me long to understand that this would soon become not only a lifetime project, but a life-changing project. As I say, I see architecture as a protective structure that holds bodies to exist, and therefore I've been dedicating my whole career into understanding what is that space that holds our lives and that provides the possibility of us to exist in this planet. I have not found any other typology rather than the monastery that really is dedicated to hold a physical body to subsist with all its necessities, but not only to subsist, to be able to thrive and to live very profoundly, to perform this spiritual life that it's aiming for. This building is totally surrendered to that condition, which I have not found any other. Of course, by now you might be imagining that I'm going to try to convince you that we should all become monks or that we should all live in monasteries, which is not what I'm here for. I just wanted to kind of walk you through the process on how this project has already been a life-changing experience. When I understood that the monastery is really a typology that is dedicated in full to hold bodies, physical bodies to exist, I discovered it through the fact, well, I didn't discover it, I understood it myself, no discoveries were made here, that by the act of understanding and articulating the scales and the rhythms in which this building is inhabited, linked to the rituals of the body, but to the rhythm of the body to the environment, linked to the environment, it would perform as a real platform to hold these physical bodies. What do I mean with that? I mean, and it is easy because every monastery responds to a single kind of plan that is very described, connected to the ritual, as I said. The first descriptions of this space are to be found in the Rule of Saint Benedict that was wrote in the 6th century by Saint Benedict, and where he understood the necessity of the monk to have a collective community of persons, of other monks or brothers and other people, to be able to perform this individual spiritual life. So also, he understood that the rituals needed to be linked to the hours of the day and the days of the year through kind of an understanding on how the sun and the incidence of the exterior plays a role into the space to make these bodies be able to survive. The Cistercian order was founded in the 11th century by many different people. One key people who wrote an apology to the letter of Saint Benedict was Saint Bernard, and Saint Bernard described in his apology much more what a space to hold bodies means. And with that on mind, the interpretation of it is the monastery and its plan that we currently live and inhabit all over the world, in the Catholic world, because it surrendered to exactly being able to allow these monks to perform this ritual. So the understanding that the space needs to hold rituals is something that has changed completely the way I operate and the way I think on domestic space, because we do all need to sleep, but none of us do it the same way. We do all need to eat, but none of us have the same way of performing the ritual of eating to nurture our bodies. In any regard, we do all need to be clean, but we don't all bathe the same at any point. We do perform all those things with our own rituals, maybe not necessarily to a specific surrendered one that is very directed like in this monastery, but we do all have that. While assuming that we only need to hold in architecture functions like sleeping, eating, resting, bathing, we are eliminating the possibility and the necessity of ourselves to exist in that building through the rituals we perform in life. So that is kind of the first landing. Of course, the challenges to build a monastery here are very big. I can tell you about the direct ones of kind of navigating through German law and from Mexico in the middle of a forest. But I would say that those are normal challenges that we encounter in probably every project that we go in. So are normal challenges. The big challenge here is to understand how to then create a building to hold a ritual that was imagined in the 6th century, that has been held for those long centuries till today in the same exact way. How to understand that the architecture that responds to these needs to kind of grasp all the symbolic ideas that this order is based on, and that is every move that to build this building, to design, to imagine, to build, and to design this building is totally linked to the ritual that is performed there from its like bottom conceptual form. So the other thing that we had to really change, transform, and understand was that the way we knew how to do architecture was not the way that it was going to take us to design the building here. Not any single move, not any single element of this building is designed through a rational logic. Everything responds to a symbolic position, condition or kind of an understanding of the ritual that is performed there. So a step is not put to allow you to go into a different gradient of the terrain. A step is put symbolically to make you understand that you're ascending to something else, depends on the space. Same with every single decision. So a square is just not a square because you like the proportions or because they feel they go well with the site. A square means a specific thing. The size of the square means a specific thing. The material in which this is it means a specific thing. The way the materials are put together, the way they're used, the intrinsic kind of the bones of the building need to be logical with it as well. So not any single decision on this building, on this design, is done rationally, which totally transformed the way I think and see of architecture. I truly never was aware on how I had to surrender to that until I enter, and I'm sorry I don't have an image of that here, I enter the chapel of Las Capuchinas from Luis Barragan in Mexico. I've been there many, many, many times. And I understood that Luis Barragan, who's the only Pritzker Prize in Mexico, so Pritzker is the Nobel of Architecture, that's a very big recognition. He was an important, very big architect. That was for me to just say that. He built this chapel in a monastery of women nuns. And this chapel really has a very specific characteristic that for me was not able to be described with words. And the 300th time I entered to this place, already being working for 5 years maybe in this monastery, I understood that the only way I was going to be able to imagine a space like this was if I would live a spiritual life the way that Barragan did live a spiritual life, and that the things that made that space super spiritual was not the physical move or the geometrical moves, was the way of understanding this spiritual space. That is still something I have not arrived. I don't live my life like that. But we are moving forward with the design. Hopefully we are able to achieve kind of those conditions. But I think that the other important, very big lesson and more pragmatic and directly to what we have done, and we have kind of thought of researching through the moves of architecture, is the fact that in this monastery, so not only rituals are understood as a fundamental part of a human being that need to be held in spaces, is that also we need to be understood with our two intrinsic ways of being and existing. First of all, we are intimate individual selves, but we are absolutely interconnected to the other. So we have these two very specific conditions that need to work together at the same time to exist in this planet. One that allows and needs us to be interiorly with ourselves and nurture our own body, our physical body, because that's the only way we live. And the other one that recognizes our interconnectedness since even before we were born. So, and without it, we also don't exist. So this space, the monastery, understands that from a core and orchestrates very well the way a body transitions from its intimate self to the massive collective. Something we also don't do in our kind of built environment ever, no? We live today in buildings and more that kind of just add doors, and the moment you open them, you're exposed to this huge, massive collective that is very then hard to relate to. So this monastery, what it's doing is creating a set of scaled relationships of spaces that also are progressing like that, to allow the monk and the body to move in that direction to build up tighter nets with others. So the monastery understands, well, the structure of the monastery, not speaking about the physical space, but the monastery as a community space, understands that the first protective layer of the body is the robe. And the robe, yes, has a distinctive identitarian purpose, but its first purpose is to become that protective layer, the first protective layer to the body. Then the next protective layer is the monk's cell, the individual cell, which is connected to the cloister, where it's the first moment where that body interacts with its intimate others, the brothers. Then the cloister is connected to the rest of the more collective functions of the monastery, where the rest of the community of the monastery converges, like the refectory, the chapel, the library, the chapter room, etc. And then that is connected to the church, where it's kind of the end grain that connects that interior community to the exterior community. The monks perform, let's say, we could say perform through their day, through praying and working. Ora elabora is their mode of existing. And the rhythm on how they pray and work and how they fulfill their physiological necessities is through a very specific rhythm of the day that brings them from their intimate self towards the big collective, but in phases, never from their bare body to the church that connects to the community. Always it's going in stages. So this is a very interesting way of understanding how you can start to become collective and how to start to form a community by creating ties that go first with your intimates, then with a smaller common collective, then with a massive collective, and then maybe the general public in full. So I think that this is, for me, very directly and easy transferable to kind of the understanding on how to create place and space. We're working in a project in St. Louis, Missouri, for a block, a residential block in an infill former residential area that was very prominent near to the university and to theaters and this very kind of active area of the city, and that in the 40s and 50s, as the rest of St. Louis center, lose its population towards the suburbs. Right now, people are returning, and we were commissioned to understand how to build 22 houses that formerly had one single lot, one single house, one single garden facing a street, to understand how to promote a possibility of a different neighborhood. What we did here is understanding that we could create those private spaces, the private homes, individual private homes, but the intentions on how to and where to connect those and to relate those and to position them in the ground could potentially create platforms for different type of relationships. So what we did is we curated a plan where each of the houses face different types of spaces interiorly. None of them are facing the street. They face an interior collective space that has many different characteristics and scales. And it's curated to hold spaces that are going from the interior of the intimate space towards the exterior, the collective, and the street. We have spaces as large as a pool that holds the whole community together of these blocks, so that is one collective space. We have even a public space, which is a park, a little dog park, but I mean, we put a dog park, but it's used by everybody. We have spaces that are smaller to hold some neighbors, not all of them. Not all of them would fit there. We have exterior spaces that hold also intimate activities. We have exterior spaces that put together different species as well. We have a productive garden. We have a playground for many different types of games and activities to be played. And the whole idea is that the houses also follow that kind of ethos, or are the ones who kind of pivotally start to put that or to drive that direction towards the project. We have 4 different types of houses. One is done by us, by our office, so we did the plan of the block, and then we invited 3 other firms, Moss from New York, Productora from Mexico and New York, and Macias Peredo from Guadalajara, to each design a different house. Then these 4 types of houses are replicated through the whole plan, or through the whole block, And by being there kind of rhythmically placed, are trying to also create a diverse settling that kind of holds a diverse population to live in it. Our house tries to, as I said, be the pivot of the start of this principle. And what we did is we did a very simple volumetric move, that a rectangle, the one on top of 2 floors, the one on top is moved and rotated 90 degrees to kind of provide an intimate platform for the more intimate part of life in this place. And then the ground floor that opens itself through a large kind of awning and terrace that exposes the house, let's say, to the collective, to the immediate collective that surrounds it. So this is a ground floor that then kind of pivots around these a sculptural stair, and that then brings you up to the more private spaces of it. 18 houses have been built, 14 have been inhabited, and the other 4 are being built. So the communities are already starting to thrive here. The garden is starting to also bloom and to populate, and we're starting to understand these types of relationships. This is the house of Macías Peredo, and here you can see the house in the forefront of Productora, and in the back with the chimneys of Moss. We also decided to orchestrate this kind of block to use one material but in different colors. So every house is done in brick, but every brick is a different color, slightly a different color, and it progresses from one end to the other one. In this way, we really tried to understand how in the private realm we can enhance and provide the possibility through the same kind of gestures as the monastery towards the living and the housing environment. After we got the commission of the monastery, but not so many years after, we were asked to do a church. And it was, I thought it was going to be an easy endeavor because we had really understood how to transform ourselves and many, many deep things, as I said, and moves through the lenses of our work done in the monastery. So when we were confronted to this church, we thought it was going to be easy, let's say. But very soon we understood that this has a completely different story, so we had to understand completely different things. So while the moves that we understood from the monastery to the housing could be applied in the way I was saying, the moves for the church were completely different, and this took us a while to understand. This church is to be built, it's actually starting construction pretty soon, in front of a university which is called Universidad de Monterrey. In Monterrey, Monterrey is the second largest city in Mexico, in the country. It's in the northeast part of the country, close to the border of Texas. And Monterrey is a very industrial city with large universities. It's a large city, of course, and this is one of them. We built a building, which I'm going to talk a little bit later on it, in this university already. There's this big building you see in concrete, like a bridge, is a Tadao Ando building, which is an incredibly renowned international Japanese architect. And so the university has these icons already built in place, and our task is to build a church in front. Of course, churches were the places of encounter and the places of community, platforms for communities to be formed. This used to be that, and that is the center of cities in many regards in many of the Occidental world. But in Monterrey, which is a city, a much modern city that is totally surrendered to cars, these churches have become like an hybrid space of a social community space, but much more a performative one that needs to be the place where you're shown, seen, but also the attractor in terms of the aesthetics of it. So the challenge here became, first of all, how to do an icon to perform this kind of ritual when you have this type of environment, but most importantly, and for me, is this landscape, which is very present and very, very iconic in this place. But our understanding of these through the lens of the spiritual ritual that was going to happen here took us nowhere until we understood that this church is primarily a community space, a social space. So when we understood that and we started to create all the moves to hold an atrium that really promotes social activity, then we started really to understanding how to overcome kind of all the challenges that we had with the design of it. So we created an atrium that responds to the topography in a beautiful way, because there's kind of a very deep change of grade in the bottom of the image. You'll see that's the south, and that is a very big street that it's higher than the street below, and then the topography goes down. So we're taking advantage of that, created the entrance in the lower part of the site, and then having an atrium that is able to be covered using kind of the same grade that acquires from the street. And this way, being like very bold about the possibility of holding people in this place, much more than a ritual itself. Of course, that's very important, but we wanted to understand how to provide a space for this community to use, to be formed, to convey, and to then perform this ritual together. We, as I said, have almost finished the design, and the construction of this will start very, very soon. I was previously saying that before that project, we did a project already in this site, which is a university building. It's a house for students. One of the other things that I really have kind of through the lens of understanding domesticity and the way we inhabit, working to think that then led me to work only on houses, has allowed me to understand that domesticity happens everywhere and all the time. We live 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So we live point everywhere. Every place is a domestic space. Some of them are more intimate, some of them are more collective, some of them are for intimate possibilities of building ourselves and with our close constituents, and some of them are to build the collective, some of them are to build the public or the political life. No? So understanding that, and by that what I mean is understanding that spaces are for people to live in it. So, and this is very specific because it's to hold lives of students. So the program is literally to hold lives of students. What is there? Lounges, libraries, spaces to rest, to talk, to meet, rooms to study. Then there's also an administrative area. It's also admissions and counseling. And then there's kind of a commercial space within it. This is the space, the building that faces the university, that really gives the possibility of the university to face the street, to link to the city through the activity that is happening there. So we built this building, which is very, very large. It's 100,000 square meters, which I think it's 1 million square feet. Sorry, the world is in meters, but I try to make the change. I think it's 1 million square feet. And so it's very, very big because it holds also a very big parking space, because the intention is to eliminate all the cars from the campus. And the goal is to eliminate every single car from the compound at all, finally, when they are able to cooperate with the city to remove cars and be able to arrive with public transport. I don't know when that's going to happen, but hopefully it's happening soon. But what we did is to understand that to create a building here, we needed first to face the city, then to hold the landscape. And to face the city and hold the landscape for us meant to engage with the structure, the built structure that holds a very big program, starting with cars and, well, no, starting with people, but also holding cars. And then an important relationship towards the landscape that the university is pursuing, no? That's why they're removing the cars. So through a structural aesthetical move, we really tried to bring the structure out of the building to reach the landscape and to provide different types of spaces for students to be held. What I really think is that one of the conditions that why the students are feeling that this is a space for them to be held, is because we didn't start designing thinking that this was a building that holds half of its space cars. We always thought that this building was going to be used by humans in every regard, in every single space. So the structure is not surrendered to the car, which is normally a move that in contemporary architecture is done. The structure is that not only the structure is not surrendered to the cars, every single move is surrendered to the scale, the movement, and the possibility of humans to inhabit. So also to be able to give birth to a different possibility when this half of the cars, half of the building space is liberated because the cars are moving elsewhere. So this is the building we did in the university in front of the, on where it's gonna, now the church is gonna build. And one of the kind of bigger moves for us was this, no, the connection of the landscape, the city, and the student itself. And this is something that I think we have done in several ways, in many ways, moving through different projects. And this is exactly what a domestic space means. No, it's architecture is a platform for holding lives, to provide possibilities, to serve as a medium for us to relate with our own ecosystem, with our own environment, with our own context. So this is a topic that comes intrinsically together with us. This is an auditorium that we built in Oaxaca that is just barely finished. It now is starting to become activated. That the idea was it to be a public plaza. So we thought of it, yes, we need an auditorium and people need to perform activities such as this one, for example, but also many others, theater, ballet, different types of performances. And we thought of providing a building that even becomes more. Normally this type of auditorium serves for very little different things, not many, things that need to be used with the same kind of audience and type and arrangement, and we wanted to take it into a different possibility. So the first thing was that we needed to think that this building could perform as just a public building that is open all the time. So through the idea of liberating the ground from it could perform as an open plaza that can be, it's permeable, it's open to everybody. And through the kind of use of automatic lifts and seats, etc., you could arrange it very differently to perform as an auditorium. The other thing is that we, kind of this porous structure, we wanted really to create a different types of layers that kind of perform with the weather. We are here in Oaxaca, which is very, very generous weather. So there's no glass. This is just precast columns, and that are just kind of evolving in or surrounding an interior space that then gives birth kind of the interior promenade that opens the space to be entered to. And as I said, kind of the flexible interior allows different configurations of seats, different ways of performing an act, so you can seat people on the balconies. The way you navigate the balconies is the same way you navigate the city, the building in section. There is kind of this grandeur entrance that it performs as an opening hall, as a layer between the exterior and the interior. And the idea that this connects as a building, a fluid building with the surroundings and the plaza was something that we really pursued and that we have really been engaged with in every other building we do. We think that the limitations that architecture have provided to us towards the use of space are very big. The kind of determination on who can, who cannot use a space through the lens of the architect or the architecture itself is very harsh in many ways, of course, for society, for culture, but in many ways also for the environment, and I'm going to explain why more. We have been working for 20 years. June 2005 was when we started, so almost 20 years, in this project, which is a botanical garden. This is in Culiacan. Culiacan is a city on the northwest of the country. It's a very little kind of inner city, not so far from the coast. And this is the capital of the state of Sinaloa. You might know this state because it's the state where the Cartel de Sinaloa, where El Chapo is from, that he has become kind of the flag of the state. And this is exactly one of the reasons why we were hired to do this project, because people behind it were very proud of their city and were really sick that this city was only known, even now was permeating, even then in 2005, it was permeating to its inhabitants that it was the capital of the drugs. They really wanted to change it because this is not a city, of course, only of that in any regard. There's a large population that is not part of this business at all. So how to change that was through supporting public spaces that were already there, creating a more kind of intrinsic and deep understanding of their identity as Culiacanenses with these spaces. So what we were asked to do is to work in this existing botanical garden that had been there for 25 years, that was really a place of encounter, that people would hold very deeply in their hearts as an understanding of an urban space that links the culture here. So it was a very difficult commission, of course, to intervene in a space that already had been very regarded on that. In the beginning, when I arrived to the site, June 2005, I thought, well, this space had been done in a very intuitive way. It was built by an engineer that was totally passionate by plants, who started connecting privately a series of seeds and then plants, and his collection started to grow. And one day he thought that his collection was already big enough to be public, so he convinced the governor of the state, and this is a true story, he convinced the governor of the state that this could be a nice endeavor, and the governor said, okay, use that space that it's like kind of relegated to nothing behind the university. And he did, and he started that garden in the 80s with that kind of condition and regard. And by the 2005, he had already this big, huge garden with an incredible collection, but done in a very intuitive way. So when I arrived, I thought, well, this place needs, first of all, a plan, no? In my architecture mind, needed to be organized. And it wasn't sufficiently planned to hold everything that was holding. So in order to insert anything, we needed to plan it. And like by the month number 3, I really understood that it was very well planned. It might not have been planned the way I was taught or the way I was told that plan should be, but it was very well planned. It was as well planned as regarded in the society. So how did we have to find better codes to relate to this way of planning and to intersect our buildings was our challenge. We understood that creating pavilions that would kind of provoke different possibilities of understanding of a different space in the garden would be the path to go, and that's how we did it. So creating different little pavilions, that's how we're doing it, because we're working in continuous since 2005. We also have accompanied the installation of more than 50 works of art. This is one by James Turrell. And the work with artists has been super intensive to also insert in the garden specific artworks of the size of James Turrell or Dan Graham or Olafur Eliasson or Gabriel Orozco, Francis Alice. I mean, really big moves, pieces of art that are inserted in the garden, and how those buildings that can hold different types of activities are then inserted was always a question for us. So by kind of fracturing the program in the most expression possible and placing very strategically these little pavilions in different parts of the garden, we wanted to open paths for the people to probably see deeper to this garden and to obviously be kind of having opportunities of being held with, for example, shadow when you enter, an iconoclastic image when you kind of approach a garden to mark that there is the entrance, but also moves like, for example, exposing to the eyes of the visitors the way the garden is irrigated. So the irrigation system of the garden is very very simple. It's done through gravity. So there's a river that runs not so nearby, so it's not so obvious, this link for the people. So water is deviated on the top of the river and then on the top of the garden, and then through gravity, this garden is irrigated and then the water goes back again. But this flow of water is, of course, controlled by when you open the doors to that flow. But then before, it was not being able to be seen. Nobody would have been able to see that process. So we open paths to specifically create those relationships. And in the same way, we tried to hold our architecture to become those protective shells that would allow the programs to exist, but really always reminding you that you are in a botanical garden. So what does it mean? That we created groups of little pavilions that hold each an activity. And for example, this one is an auditorium with a little reception area, which is where the kids are sitting, that it's related to 3 other buildings, and one of them holds the bathrooms. And so yes, the bathrooms are outside the auditorium building. And if you're in the auditorium, you need to go to the bathroom and it's raining, yeah, you have to get wet. This is a botanical garden. It's not a shopping center or a university where you probably don't need to get wet. But here you need to understand that you are in a botanical garden. So every building is surrendered to the fact that architecture should also allow you to be reminded that you are here, that the weather is a fact and why the place exists and how it performs, and that you are part of this system, no? So yes, if it's raining, you get wet, but if it's there's a bird singing, you hear him as well, and if it's very hot, you also get very, very sweaty as well, no? Every building is designed to have one single big gesture, which is all conducted together. So it's a material that holds everything together. Yes, it's concrete, the culprit of all the sins in the world, and that holds everything together, holds the structure, holds the building in one move. It's a one single layer of 30 centimeters. And why it's in concrete, I think it's important to say. And this is something I really have made a point. So yes, maybe if you see the things in the global and you flatten the problems, you can think of concrete being the culprit of the world. But in this case, Culiacan is in average in summer 38 degrees centigrade, and that, I'm sorry, I have no idea what is in Fahrenheit. I think it's very, very hot. It's over 100, but I don't know how much. And that's an average for 3 months of the year. 2 weeks of that 3 months is even over 40. And for 6 months then is 32, which is already 90s or 100s of Fahrenheit, I think. And then there's a winter of 20 degrees, that's 70 degrees or something, and that's it. If you build with any other material that is not concrete, you would have to do a very big gesture and expenditure of energy to really allow any activity to happen in the interior comfortably. So this concrete reduces the amount of heat that comes in. Not only that, it controls the temperature up to 10 degrees inside, I believe it or not, I'm not I'm not the selling agent of the concrete company, and I actually didn't believe the concrete company when they told me that. But after 15 years that these buildings have been standing there, now the garden has saved more than 90% of what they has spent in their lives of electricity. So these buildings really do perform very well with the environment. We have paid the carbon footprint that they generated 10 years ago. So the decisions on what is the sustainable material correspond to the very specific local condition, and that is one of the problems. The unsustainability comes from thinking that we all live all the same, and that we all need to live all the same, and that we all need the same solutions. So being local means to be much more sustainable. Not necessarily, but that's, for me, the first rule. The second set of buildings that we did here were these kind of storage spaces where I have the same kind of notion and understanding of one material that becomes everything, the structure, the aesthetical definition, the insulation that holds everything together. No? This is a storage area, labs, areas for employees, and we also did a building for the offices of the place and the tickets office and the shops, etc. in the garden. We're now moving into 3 new areas of the garden, doing also little pavilions to hold other different activities. Because we did this project, we were asked to do this park. So this park is in Mazatlan. It's the second largest city of the state of Sinaloa. Mazatlan is to the south, and it's near the shore. And because of our intervention in the Botanical Garden, they asked us to think how to intervene in this space, which had been called the Central Park of Mazatlan since ever, but had never understood how to combine kind of the physical characteristics of it, which is a natural regulating lagoon, with the social or recreational aspect that the city wanted to offer. Also, it was a matter of money. It was a matter of many, many other things. Finally, all the things came together, and they asked us to understand what and how could one intervene in a place like this. So understanding the condition of the natural regulating lagoon that kind of provokes 3 different types of spaces in the garden, one that is always flooded, one that is sometimes flooded, sometimes dry, and one that is always dry. We designed spaces that could hold those 3 conditions together, but also that expose the social life to interact with those conditions. For us was important because in Mazatlan also, the temperature, I've described it, of the state, people do not kind of normally relate to weather, to changes, to cycles of life, because they tend to think that there's one season, which is hell because it's very hot, and that it doesn't change, but it does change. No, there's a cycle of winter, spring, summer, and fall that does create changes. And in this case, the lagoon allows us to expose that. So this space is used differently, not through the fact that there's one time snow, one time the leaves are in the floor, and one time flowers. In this case, it's because the water goes up and down. The first move we had to do for doing that was to clean the lagoon, because the lagoon was the recipient of all the sewage of all these buildings that are facing the sea. And when we were designing, we understood that there were 2 very big pieces of infrastructure that were not designed by us, a museum and an aquarium, and that were going to be built. They both had conceptual projects, and we just worked with it. When we started working and regenerating the lagoon, the success of the regeneration and understanding of the connection of the social and the environment started to be very successful for civic life. So they asked us to then think on the aquarium. And I had a really big problem because I didn't believe in aquariums. First of all, I told the people behind it, it's like, I don't know why you are going to make an aquarium, because an aquarium is exactly what this mural that Diego Rivera did in 1933 in the Rockefeller Center, which was erased by the Rockefeller family. They felt offended, and then Diego Rivera painted it in Palace of Fine Arts in Mexico, where it is now. It is titled Man Controller of the Universe, and exactly I think that the aquariums are those programs that men think that they could, since it's this life we cannot enter, why not bring it to us and fantasize with it, create purple lights to even enhance it, and perform as a entertainment space. And the second fact is that I was very kind of skeptical on their idea of an aquarium, because they had an aquarium that held penguins and species from different parts of the world in Mazatlan, which is 40 degrees over the scale of 0. I mean, very, very hot. So I was like, well, you have one of the most important natural aquariums, which is the Sea of Cortez, at your footstep. Why would you want to bring a structure inside the land that even holds species that are not there? And the response to that was that, no, yes, we had that idea, but now we understand that we need to hold kind of the understanding of a place that creates an identitarian possibility for the community of the city to relate to its own environment, to the Sea of Cortez. And that's when I said, okay, now we're talking business. We're gonna work on it, it's fine. But if we're gonna do that, then we're gonna find the people who have done this in the world, because obviously nobody invents anything, everything has been done. So why don't we look for it? And we understood that Oceanwise, which is an organization that held the Vancouver Aquarium, that created the Vancouver Aquarium, had been doing that in British Columbia for 50, 60 years or so. So when we invited them, they designed the platform, the institution, and with that, we had to design a building. When we had the task of designing the building, we asked ourselves, okay, now what is a building that holds that together, no? That promotes the possibility of the understanding of this society to be part of their ecosystem, to be part of the Sea of Cortez, that becomes this social place of interaction with other types of life. And we couldn't imagine that. So we thought that in the year 2289, when we arrived to this place, we found a building that was built on the year 2023, and that because of the sea is going to rise, it was flooded in the year 2100, and that when the sea receded, the life that had taken over when the sea was there had stayed. So we arrived only as architects in the year 2289 to open these paths to allow you to see how life had taken over this building, and to bring you up to see the environment that had kind of taken the rooftop to their place of living, and then immerse you in this center circle that takes you into this building, that lets you understand what types of species inhabited on it. And this building was built in the year 2023, and since the May 2023, it was open to the public, and now it has been, May 2024. It has been the recipient of 1.5 million of humans that have visited. But the building is functioning as hopefully the future recipient of many more of different species of other types of animals. So in truth, I mean, we created this narrative to be able to imagine such a building, but the idea of it is really that it's a space that we don't know what it was built for, that is not surrendered to a specific program, but it is just kind of creating a platform for life to take over in many regards. So it has air and water to be able to hold different species, so maybe sometimes humans that become fishes as well, or fishes that become humans, we don't know. But in any regard, the building is there, it's open, it's visitable now by is being visited by 1.5 million people. And with this, I think I'm going to end my talk. Thank you very much.
We have time for a couple questions. And so there's a microphone on either side of the room. We can take a few before we close for tonight.
Well, people start to understand how to pose questions. I also wanted to tell you that I think architecture is a collective act. It's never done by a single person. It's done by millions of people. But certainly close to me are these 6 people who are my partners.
When you did the botanical garden, how did you keep from destroying the actual species that were already growing in the garden?
Yeah, that's a very good question. First of all, there were many spots that were taken by little huts or structures that already existed that were not performing correctly, so that was the first start. And the second was to strategically understand where we could kind of move some of the species that had been inhabiting that space, or that they were not holding kind of specific collections, more endemic plants that grew up naturally. And the whole idea was to bring the buildings that create an imposition to that land, that provoke a totally different kind of environmental performance, but to then at some point become also part of them. So we again promoted the possibility through light, air, and water to be invaded by plants as well. So these buildings are also, plants are growing on top of them or aside of them, birds are nesting and these things, and we appreciate that, no? I think that architecture, and that is an extremely important question because that's something that really has been a topic always in our work, is architecture has a very specific determinant and creates a determination condition that it's inescapable, no? And the most kind of difficult thing is that to understand that that is held in an ever-changing organic life ground and holds an ever-changing condition, which is life itself, no? So how to work with a very determinant thing, a very determined and determinant thing that holds an ever-changing process is something that we have also tried to work. Of course, the aquarium kind of tackles that in a much more open way, no? Of thinking of a building that holds many cycles of life. But the garden was thought in this specific regard, no? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tatiana, for the lecture. I have 2 questions related to the Olive West project. The first one is related to the how to manage or avoid the conflict that happened in that case of project where the privacy and communality is have a close encounters. That's the first question. And the second question, is it possible that that kind of project, something like co-housing, it's handled by developer that they will have a more profit vision than social vision? Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I don't know if I understood very well your first question. If you're asking about how we manage property, it was a challenge, definitely, because I mean, you own the footprint of your house, and then there's a specific exterior space that also you own as a private owner, but that is in stewardness for the collective. So I think that might answer your question in terms of how legally it was solved. In terms of how socially is solved, is exactly that. So you have the complete freedom of doing whatever you want in your house. It's your private entity. But as soon as the exterior comes in, it needs to be decided by the whole block, let's say, no? So it is managed in a way as a condominium, let's say. I mean, that's a very bad thing to say probably to this beautiful space. But in this case, it's managed like that, no? So it's administrated by the neighbors and decided in a common way to maintain and sustain the collective space, which creates conflicts, but then builds communities. That's the only way, no? And one of the things that I really kind of think, and this project for me is obvious on tackling that, no, is that we as architects are taught, and I have been said that we don't have the capacity of the power to build a city, no? Maybe planners can influence more, but that we architects don't. But if you think that every city is the sum of its parts, every single move that you provide, that you create in the city, it's creating the city, it's really making the city, then you have to really truly understand that even by doing the refurbishment of a living room, you are promoting or disfranchising the people from the relationship towards the city. The way you put a fence, the way you put a house, the way you orientate a window, the way you open a door to relate to the other, the way you put a wall, it's really saying what type of city that house is being exhibited to. So the idea with this project is to promote a possibility of a different way of engaging with your common, with your collective, and with the city at large. I don't know if it's gonna be replicated. In this moment, I think it's very hard because it's very subsidized. In terms of economically, at least, it's very, very hard because it was totally subsidized. Even though it's not cheap to buy a house here. The idea in the beginning was that this would have been an affordable place to live in St. Louis, Missouri. It was not possible, even though it's truly subsidized by who owned the land, which is the Pulitzer Foundation. So I don't know how replicable as a specific example is, but I hope, and my aspiration is that the strategies behind, the composition, the types of scaling, the types of relationships could be applied in different ways in other projects. And actually, we have done that. I mean, I here only presented one project, but we have tried to understand how are those types of relationships, even in a building of 150 units, no? And how to orchestrate those possibilities, even with one singular volume, let's say. No?
Okay, we have one last question over here.
Hi, thank you very much for your lecture. I'm coming away from it feeling extremely inspired, and I was especially very taken with your representational techniques, with your hand-done collages and your textural and painterly renderings, whereas nowadays most firms turn towards this photorealistic and sterile perspectives. And I was wondering, what role do these representational techniques play in your design process?
Thank you. That's a big topic of like 3 lectures, but I'm going to resume it in one. And I didn't in one answer, not in one lecture. I'm not going to give another one. But it's a very, very important, fundamental thing of the way we work. In a way, the answer would be we don't do architecture, so we cannot be compared to those firms that do architecture with renders and plans. On the other hand, I do think we do architecture, but in a different way. So what we work with people through their stories to build spaces. We don't build spaces to provide stories that are held by people. I think it's a completely different understanding. We don't do objects in landscapes that then are going to be inhabited by people. We create platforms for people to then be able to enjoy landscapes. And when I understood that very clearly, I was able to understand why collages were representing the things we do very well. In the beginning, I had to challenge the way we use tools of representation because they didn't work for what I was trying to tell. They didn't convey my message. So I started kind of testing, and we still do. We not only use collages, we use narratives like in the Aquarium, or we use painting, or we use conversations, or we use many, many different mediums. In large amounts, we use collage, and we tend to think that everything we use is a collage. But the collages were really kind of conveying the message, no? Because the architecture that we're trying to do, in a way, is a collage. Is a space for many different codes that can hold something and convey one message, but can also convey many different messages to first say something about a collage. But the other and most important thing is that a collage is able to bring you in that image, because your interpretation is the way that image is then. No, it has not a single line. So you are invited to this conversation the way we believe that architecture should do, to provide the possibility that you inhabit this space the way you inhabit the world, not the way we think you should inhabit the world. So a collage really made our ideas much more able to be conveyed. Our conversations were able to be moved, because a collage, as I said, is interpreted by every human being in a different way. So with that, we created controversies and conflicts, and therefore conversations to build spaces for more minds. And then really we understood that kind of the collage, and not only challenging the way we represent was what we were doing, we were challenging the way we think of architecture at the end.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and a huge thank you to Tatiana.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.